You know I love my work reform stories. We're going to do two of them in this segment. One of them is pretty good news. We'll do that one second. Let's start with this idea of digital presenteeism. And what this is describing is the behaviors such as participating a little extra in meetings so that you get that visibility with your management, participating in Slack or Teams a little bit more so that people can see that you're working, responding very quickly to messages. And the idea is that if I can respond quickly, then it looks like I'm doing work. And I think there's two sides to this. One side is in these articles, they're talking about how these behaviors are actually hurting productivity and morale. So if I have work to do, but I'm also spending time trying to look busy on top of that, then that's taking time away from the work that I could be doing. The other side of it, though, I think, is people who are actually not doing a lot of work, but trying to appear as if they are doing a lot of work. Which to me maybe is the bigger downside. And then I'll introduce the other story we've got is on the 4-day work week and a couple experiments that have been running on that front. So we'll talk about both of these stories with Peter and Jon on today's Not So Critical Update.
Mike, you do such better intros than me.
So good.
Yeah. I think we should just get you to do all of them, like
what
we used
natural.
to. Yeah, right. Ugh, God. Yeah,
we suck.
And I want things we do. Sorry.
Wow.
Sorry, you were going to say something serious, Mike. Go ahead.
I forget now. I don't know.
I want to say
sorry
that I totally hear this, and one thing that really bothers me in the new remote world is like being judged on if you turn your camera on or not. I am a very, very big no camera guy when it comes to meetings. I'm totally just as responsive and I'm just as active, but I want to be able to
recording a podcast that goes out to a public YouTube channel.
I'll show you. I want to be able to be in a meeting like this. Okay.
In bed.
Yeah. Literally, I want to be linear, So, but if I'm in a meeting and my camera's on, I have to be presentable. I have to sit straight, and it's also about the fact that there's like X amount of people. So, if it's me and my boss, no problem. Camera's on. I'll talk to you. I'll be comfortable, but I don't want to have to like be this robot. I want to be able to be what's comfortable for me. That's where I'm at. That's all Peter? I wanted to say.
Well, I think I was much more of a slacker when I was in an office, to be honest. And I did all the same things in some jobs where, pretending to work. The boss key exists for a reason. If anybody's heard of the boss key, it's where you play a game like Doom or I don't know, web browser game or something, and your boss comes along and so you hit escape or something, and then it shows up a fake spreadsheet. It's a thing. Yeah, we've been doing this all our lives. Nothing changed really.
But I was reading Reddit and Excel for the longest time. There is literally a Reddit Excel site where it will pull the front page of Reddit into what looks like an Excel spreadsheet. Super common. Because the pressure of an office, I'm totally with you, Peter. The pressure of an office, I think, primarily is, do you look busy?
Yeah, right. There's the classic thing about walking around with a clipboard and a piece of paper and just going over like, yep, where you can get away with anything.
If I was working from home, I could do all my duties, but I could still browse Reddit without feeling the stress or being, misleading or whatever. And I think that's super important now, is that we get that comfortability of, are you doing well? Yes. Okay, great. Keep doing well and do whatever you want. But back in the office, it was like, let me go stand by the water cooler for an hour, right? I don't know. I am happy with the direction we're taking, but there's some serious hurdles like this one that we're going to have to overcome.
I am a huge advocate of work from home. I've been work from home for 7 years. No need to go back to the office. I will say, one, I'm a huge advocate for cameras on during meetings. Like if it's an all hands and there's 40 people there, then forget about it. But if I'm in a small team meeting, I would definitely want everybody to have their cameras on. When I was running a software company a couple of years ago, it was my first experience with a fully remote company. And I was really concerned about maintaining culture in that environment because before that, I'd been in more of an office environment. But it actually ended up working really well. And I don't know how much of it I attribute to the having cameras on, but I always felt like that was important. And I think with this, when I went fully remote, it's not that I felt pressured to show that I was working, but I did like people to know, like you don't get the same kind of status updates. Like you talk in the halls, you'll say like, hey, how's that project going? It's going great, boss. Whatever. You like those little interactions you don't have. And so I do think checking in a little bit more often on Slack or Teams is helpful. I think digital presenteeism is maybe going a step further. I mean, you could even look at things like mouse jigglers. Like you're trying to convince somebody that you're online being productive, even though you're off doing whatever, who knows what. But if I can respond to Slack from my phone while I'm standing in line at Dairy Queen or whatever, then I'm working. Yay. And I think that's kind of the downside of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Fair point. But if managers judged their employees on results, who gives a shit?
Yeah. And that's the main point of these. That's the main point of this article actually is instead of judging productivity by butts and seats, measure it based on the results and stop worrying about that, which is a huge paradigm shift, I think, for management and businesses in general.
The thing is, I get it, right? I still remember the feeling of like things just not feeling right, and then suddenly, when you shift to working a different way, and then like, oh, that's just not how things are done. I've got to be at work at 9 o'clock in the morning because that's what's expected of me. But then finding out that it doesn't matter, and I still got loads of work done, and actually I think I'd be more productive because I've been kind of chilled out about it. And someone who joined my team when I was a manager, and he was constantly saying things like, oh, I'm just popping out for half an hour. I'm like, okay, but you don't have to tell me, like, it's fine. He's like, oh, I don't know if I'd be here for the last 2 hours. I'm like, okay, whatever, work at 3 a.m. if you like. I don't give a shit as long as you get the shit done and tell me if you have any problems. And then he kind of relaxed eventually, and his instinct was like, oh, I'm not doing things properly because that's how he's done it his whole life.
Yeah, but you also don't want to be in a case where you're like, man, I haven't heard that from that guy in 3 days. I wonder what's going on.
Oh, well, sorry. The flip side is that you do have to make more of a conscious effort to check in with people. Yeah. There should be a crossover period where you're online at the same time, or some sort of scheduled, like, hey, how you doing? Daily stand-ups in Scrum World, or just something little. But because you're not next to each other, you've just got to figure that side out. But that's just working at home, I think.
Sure.
It's not too difficult.
So the other article, I think, actually is a good example of the positive side of some of these things when companies do figure out how to do this and do benefit from these changes. And this has to do with the 4-day work week. So there's a researcher in the UK who is a big advocate for the 4-day work week. So she recruited 73 companies who are willing to partake in the study. And the thesis was that for 6 months, these companies would reduce their workers' hours by 20%, moving to a 4-day work week, but continue to pay them 100% of their pay. She got 73 companies to take part in the study. And the article says the data hasn't been released, but looking at the companies, 86% who participated in the study have said they're going to keep doing it. So, almost 9 out of 10 found benefit from doing this to the point they're going to keep doing it. And one thing, and I'd never heard this before, but John Maynard Keynes declared in the early 1930s that technological advancements, and this reminded me of the Amazon story that we did earlier about when we had a discussion about the warehouse layoffs and robots and all that. This is exactly what this is setting up. that in the technological advancement would bring the work week down to 15 hours within the century. And a U.S. Senate subcommittee doubled down on this in 1965, predicting we'd only be working 14 hours by the year 2000. So where the fuck is my 4-day work week? Or this is a 2-day work week. Where's my 2-day work week? U.S. Senate from 1965.
That reminds me. So I used to read these boxes of magazines that my dad had, who was a massive hippie back in the day, and all these kind of long-haired people. And they were always going on about the 3-day work week and where is it? The kind of student protests of like, where's our 3-day work week that was promised to us? So yeah, I guess back in the 70s at least, or the 60s. How old are you, Dad, exactly? Was a thing, right? And now I think one of the points in this article was that the difference now is that because of the pandemic, they kind of forced people into this work from home and cultural shift and mindset shift. It's actually sort of proving that it can work. So yeah,
and the math supports it. If you look at the graph since the 80s, like productivity has skyrocketed, wages have stayed consistent. If I work 40 hours a week, or they could hire 3 people to work 2 days a week, like, yes, it costs them more, but we're producing so much more beyond that it the math totally works out on it. There's the only reason that this is happening is corporate greed.
I've done some napkin math
and
on
control.
This. I'm super obsessed with the 2-day work week, and when I say that, people start laughing because it's
I didn't even know you were into this.
I'm super into this. So
nice. I like it.
Take any industry, and while Mike, your point is a very big one, which is this will cost the industry more. However, the reason it works is because if we take a restaurant, the restaurant has 10 servers, okay? Each server works 2 days a week in a team of, 3, right? So with 1 extra floating around. So it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then whatever, Sunday. So they work in 2-day capsules or pods. The rest of the days is 5 days of freedom. With 5 days instead of 2 days, you now have over double the amount of free time to go to restaurants, to go shopping, to go on vacation, to fly, to do everything, aka spending more. It's crazy that this isn't talked about.
Yeah.
Because, okay, sure, you have to pay more because you need more people, but that means that those same people will spend more. The math works out. Like it makes sense. You will
and
make
be
that money
happier
back.
And more productive and more loyal. That there's huge benefits, but the corporations just look at, well, if I can get this much productivity on 2 days, then why not 3 or 4 or 5 or 7?
Yeah.
There's no limit to it, especially if they're just putting the difference in their pocket. If I worked up to my productivity commensurate with the revenue that the profit that the corporations were making, I probably would be at 2 days a week. Which also shows where we have the problem with inflation right now. Estimates show that 50 to 60% of inflation is currently caused by excess corporate profits. Like, give people the time off. Pay people more.
No. What we should do is fire people if they're not committed to working. What was the quote again?
80?
Long hours at high intensity.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
Oh, that reminds me.
Their best work.
So I used to have a MSP, a managed services provider. I was an MSP at an IT company, and it was like when I started the company, I had no idea. I would work so hard. I was working 70, 80 hours a week, and I still was like at the end of the day not having time to respond to my emails. So my genius idea was that, okay, well, if I just come to work 2 hours earlier at 5 a.m., Then I'll have 2 hours to answer emails before. So now instead of 70 or 80 hours a week, I'm talking about 80 or 90 hours a week. And it finally got to the point where I realized, this is ridiculous. I can't do it. I set a rule for myself that I'm going to work 40 hours a week. And anything I can't get done in 40 hours just isn't going to get done. I'm going to work 8-hour days, and I'll get as much done as I can in the 8 hours, and then that's it. I'll just be okay with the rest. I became so much more focused and productive. That was when my business actually started growing. Before that, I was spinning my wheels because my efforts were so distracted and unfocused and all over the place. When I actually finally committed to learning time management so I could work a reasonable schedule, that turned everything around, which is what allowed me to end up selling the company.
That's exactly what I was talking about earlier. That you're kind of the instinctive thing that seems to make sense is, well, I get this much done in this many hours, so if I work more, then I'm going to get more done. Realizing that that's not a good way of measuring things. Yeah. So I get it. I get why companies are, put off by it. And the thing is that when you are convinced by something, you'll come up with justifications for why you're right, even if you're not. And I think that's what happens a lot with some of these articles that come out, because they haven't really tried it. They have never really accepted into their soul that it helps to chill out a bit.
And I think a lot of these articles talk about measuring productivity versus measuring time. But everything about our system is set up around time. You're paid by the hour to sit in a chair for a certain amount of time. We don't know how to measure productivity because so much of what we're asking you to do is a waste of time. Busy work, sitting in meetings, just being there. That if all of a sudden we have to look at what do we actually expect you to produce? Not only do you have to produce that, the company has to figure out what the fuck it even is that they're asking you to do other than just sit in this chair. And they don't know.
Yeah.
So fun for all.
I love seeing you riled up, Mike. I love it.
These work reform stories will do it to me every single time. Join us in Discord.
Great. Let's do some more.
I would do it every single day. Are you in? Is that an invitation?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. The not so productive update. I don't know.
That's probably the most appropriate name we could come up with for this show. Yeah, not so productive. All right.
Oh yeah, come and help me name my ebook.
Join us on Discord.